I'd like to introduce my co-founder, Jason McNamee. He's with me today. For those of you, for those of you who have not met, I'm Peter Gross. I'm a co-founder of Lucent Biosciences with Jason. Um, my background is in technology and engineering development. And for about 25 years, I've been focusing on taking ideas that should work, figuring out why they sometimes fail in real life, and then projecting that to scale better solutions. And probably like a lot of you, I started my career in oceanography, which is an interesting background now that I'm in agricultural biotech. But the rationale here is in oceanography, especially with equipment, you're in a hostile environment. It looks like everything, your experiments are planned, it's all going to work great. And then as soon as you put these instruments into a real life condition, the data gets screwed up, the stuff doesn't work. So one of the things I do at Lucent is I look at why things break, why things don't work the way we expect it to. And Jason is not only just a co-founder, he's also one of my best friends. Sometimes we'll talk like an old married couple because we've been working together for like 15 years. And sometimes we finish each other's.
Sentences?
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I figured you'd. Okay. And Jason works directly with the growers and agronomists across Western Canada. And Jason's a practical, like, field guy. So he does have a profound background in science and technology. He really understands the chemistry, the modes of action of our products, but he also really understands soil tests, fertility plans. He understands trial data. And he also understands the difference between recommendation and thought. In other words, well, that sounds great, but it's not going to work on my field. Um, Jason has these exact conversations all the time. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Jason now to dig deeper into why things don't always go the way we plan.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. It's been a long road, and we're very pleased to have this opportunity. And for those of you attending, we're very pleased that you're here. So for those of you I haven't met, I'm Jason McNamee. I'm one of the founders at Lucent Biosciences. I've done a lot of different roles, as Pete said. I'm the more practical of some of the folks there, whereby I've served as the senior biogeoscientist. I've been the chief product officer, the chief operations officer, general manager, and sales rep. And quite honestly, it's the sales rep role that I've done for the last 18 months or so that has really opened my understanding as to uh, uh, how we take agronomy theory and we turn it into something that is valuable, that can produce a positive return on investment on a regular basis for our farm and retail customers. Um, so my job is basically that now, is to stand between agronomy theory and real actual agriculture. And I know agriculture is an amazing business, but it's a business like any other, and we really need to focus on return on investment. And when it comes to micronutrients in particular, we've heard a lot of I don't know if I want to say negative, but there's some ideas that they don't always work, and that sure is the case. Um, Especially when you're outside the sweet spot. Things like where your pH it doesn't cooperate, is not cooperating, or when you're in the top of the hill or the bottom of the hill, or a south-facing slope, or a north-facing slope, or an east-facing slope, right? Or you've got a lot of sand, or you've got very high organic matter, or very low organic matter. And these things can happen all in the same field. And that's why we're here today, is to talk about um, what actually works when conditions aren't perfect. So before we get really much deeper, I'm going to turn this over to you for a bit, Pete. But this is really about how we tackle these issues when we are in a position where the conditions aren't just right, and that is most of the time.
Yeah.
So how do we handle that? And Pete,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Right now, I'm looking at the graphic of the two hamburgers, and I just remembered I haven't had breakfast yet. And that's looking pretty good. I'd love to. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Yeah, I mean, we're not here to tell you to throw everything out. We're not here to tell you you're doing everything wrong. What we're here to do is explain why micronutrients have earned a somewhat bad reputation. And this generally happens when you're farming outside of the sweet spot. And what we want to do today, one of the takeaways is we'd like to, make sure that we have an understanding amongst everyone of why things sometimes fail. And when we understand why things fail, we'll be able to make better decisions, whether you use Soileos or not. And Jason, I'm going to hand it back to you now. Let's say the quiet part. The quiet part is expectation, and the loud part is reality. What's the difference?
That's, you know what, that's exactly correct, I think, Pete, is because we have these opinions. Like we all know that micronutrients are absolutely required, right? We can't have photosynthesis without iron. We can't build cell walls without zinc. And often we have very low uh, levels of those in our soil or low bioavailability of these. Um, but the process usually goes like, you soil test, you show a deficiency. You apply a product, you tissue test, you watch it all season, and nothing changes, right? And that's why micronutrients often have a bad reputation in the industry. So you've gone through, you've applied a product, you know you need, say, zinc, and you apply some, you don't see any difference, and so you assume that the zinc didn't work, right? Or the the product didn't work. But there's a problem with that logic. Pete, tell us a little bit about the problem with that logic.
Well, I mean, zinc is an element on the periodic table, and it's gonna behave like zinc does. It's gonna sometimes stick to other molecules or atoms, and sometimes it won't. And it just does what zinc does. But it's not necessarily that zinc is failing if we were going to use zinc. But Jason, what do you think could actually break? Let's say you applied a bunch of zinc to your soils and you went, I don't know, this doesn't seem to be working. Something
Yeah,
broke, Jason. What do you think?
yeah, yeah. And this is, you know, if we're talking about fertilizer, we're in an industry where fertilizer is very important to our outcome at the end of the season. But the core fertilizer, the nutrient delivery technology hasn't changed appreciably in over 80 years, right? We're talking about salts, chelates, or oxides. Those are our choices, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not that the zinc didn't work, it just wasn't delivered, or it wasn't delivered at the right time. So we're still working on, we know we need these issues when we're trying to solve these problems, but we're using chemistry that was designed, basically a century ago, right? We're using a sulfate, an oxide, or a chelate. And the salts, they dissolve whenever the soil is wet. Well, whenever the soil is wet does not necessarily coincide with when your crop requires the nutrients. Those naked ions, they will react with carbonates, they'll precipitate with phosphorus, they'll bind to clay, they'll oxidize, or they'll leach with the water, right? And so when we think about that, you go, okay, that's what happens with a salt. Then you can think, well, wait a sec, when is my soil mostly moist? Well, that's in the spring. And in the spring, my crops are, they're this big, and they don't really require those, a big dose of those nutrients at that time. We need a more timely delivery of those nutrients over the season. So if we're going to use the salt or chelate technology, you know, this is a hope strategy, right? You apply the nutrient and you hope it finds the root before the soil chemistry takes it away. And hope, Pete, hope's not a good plan.
Well, it is kind of a good plan when you're buying a lottery ticket, but we can't base an agronomy like a farming business on odds like that we have in a lottery. We want to have really, really odds stacked in our favor before we actually go through with something. But so Jason, let's talk a little bit about the sweet spot, and what it's like to farm in the sweet spot. So, Jason, I'm going to hand it back to you now. It can get frustrating, but anyway, let's dig into the sweet spot a bit, like pH.
Yeah. Well, pH, we know that the sweet spot for pH is going to be somewhere in that basically 6 to 7 range. You can go a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but it is basically in that 6 to 7 range. And here in Western Canada, we have soils that, we have acidic soils, we have alkaline soils. Where I am in Eastern Saskatchewan, our pHs are all 7.4 to 8.4. It's very high. So even though our soil tests might show that we have abundant, say zinc again, that may not be bioavailable. And these are some trials that I've run with grower customers in this area, where they're showing on their soil tests, they're showing adequate zinc, but their tissue tests are showing not adequate zinc, and their yields are impacted. So when we try different methodology, we're able to improve the zinc levels and the yields, and that's using the Soileos product.
Gotcha. And so, let's say Pete here has his, perfect happy fairy farm, right? Where my pH is, right around 7, and I get just enough rain in the spring, and then it's a little drier, and I get the perfect amount of rain, and I get the perfect amount of sunshine. Um, and Jason, how many growers have you met that live in Pete's perfect happy fairy farm environment?
I'd say zero, Pete.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. So, let's talk about what goes wrong in real cells. So we were just talking about pH, and at high pH, we know micronutrients like to snap together with hydroxides, like to combine with hydroxides and carbonates. Then they precipitate out. What do you think about that, Jason?
Well, we know that's the case, right? So how do we deal with what's an obvious problem and get the results that we're looking for? Like, we haven't figured that out yet, like as an industry on the whole, for the last 100 plus years.
And at low pH, what happens there, right? The metals are soluble, but unstable. They can leach out before the roots can get at them, right? So anyway, what I'm getting at, Jason, is I think the real frustration for a lot of growers is, where biology replaces chemistry, that interplay. If you're in the sweet spot for your NPKs, you're often not in the sweet spot for the micronutrients. And our crops are walking this tightrope, this tiny little tightrope between what's in the soil and what's actually available. Jason.
Yeah, Pete, and that's where, we get caught up with chemistry and we kind of forget about biology a little bit. Think about our fields before we started using fertilizers. Those crops that we were growing, 100, 200 years ago, they still needed iron, they still
Mhm.
needed zinc, they still needed manganese and boron. So where did they get that from? Did they get it from the mass transport? Did they get it Did they get it just straight from the soils, or was biology also involved? In insofar as mining the organic matter that had been the residual organic matter that had built up over hundreds or thousands of years? Well, the answer is both, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so what we have done, and this is really cool, this is where our patented technology comes in. And in fact, our patent is entitled uh, Composition Systems and Methods for Delivery of an Element in Response to Biological Demand. So while our competitors in this space rely on the chemistry game, we access the biological method of delivery. So that does not rely on solubility. It does not rely on pH. Our products are hydrophobic. They resist water. In our case, the nutrients are bound to carbon, and the carbon in our product is uh, mostly cellulose, but there's also some protein and starch because we use hulls from the uh, processing industry. Primarily, we use oat hulls, but we have also used pea and lentil hulls. And of course, dehulling is imperfect, so there is some residual seed left in there, which is where the protein and starch comes from. And guess what? That is what our soil microbiology requires for energy. And to get at the energy, which is in the Soileos product, they need to mineralize it. So this is what's known as microbial mineralization. The microbes break down the organic material and release the nutrients in the plant available forms.
So, Jason, just to summarize microbial mineralization in this context, so at any pH, there's going to be microbes in your soil ready to have lunch or dinner or breakfast or everything, depending on how hungry they are. And across all soils, organic matter is ready to mineralize nutrients. Did I get that right?
Yes, whether your pH is 5 or 8, it's way easier to change the fertilizer than to fix your pH across 1 acre, 5 acres, 5,000 acres, 50,000 acres, right?
Hmm. Yep. So
So,
sorry, Jason, sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
well, so that's pH. So pH is a
Yeah.
problem. It's widely variable on probably every acre that you own, or at least on each section or quarter section, it's going to be widely variable. But pH is just one part of the question, one part of the picture, right? The one of the other parts is texture. What does your soil
Hmm.
texture tell you, right? If you're got sandy soils, your sand guys go, oh, whatever I had is gone. It just leaches through or isn't taken up. If you've got clay guys, they can go, oh, I put it in there and it's okay, see it in my soil test, but it's stuck. Now these could be the same product and the same rate with totally different outcomes.
Yeah, and that I mean that's not really management. I mean it's just the physics, and and the chemistry of soils and elements. And sandy soils have a low cation exchange capacity, right? So it's a tiny little fuel tank wherein sulfates just dissolve and flush through the system, right?
Yeah, like a sieve.
And then if we get to clay soils with a high cation exchange capacity, then the negatively charged plates grab the micronutrients and they hang on to them, don't let go, and the crops can't get them, right?
Just take them, put them in the bank vault.
Yeah, exactly, right. So um, this is a lot of the context, a lot of what we wanted to get across is about this concept of the differentiation between 100-year-old technology and new technology, such as Soileos, which relies completely on microbial activity to provide nutrients to the plants. So I hope we've given you a clearer understanding of why micronutrients often fail and what changes when when delivery actually matches real world situations. So we do have a pre-submitted question. We're going to do some Q&A now. We have a pre-submitted question for the webinar, and I'm going to give this one to you, Jason, because you're the expert here on this stuff. The question is, are we seeing more tie-up of micronutrients due to different ratios, such as phosphorus to zinc, N to S ratio, calcium to K ratios? Are we seeing more of these tie-ups?
Well, yeah, Pete. I mean, and it's happening more often, particularly where we are trying to push yields higher than we ever have. When we drive up phosphorus rates, we widen the phosphorus to zinc ratio, and we know that when we do so, zinc uptake drops, even if our soil tests say our zinc levels are adequate.
Hmm.
We also know that when nitrogen goes up without matching sulfur, protein synthesis stalls, and when calcium dominates high CEC soils, potassium uptake can get suppressed. So the issue isn't always deficiency, it is an imbalance. And here's a key point. The key point is that chemistry alone has its limits. Most conventional fertilizers rely on solubility and salt chemistry. So if pH is high, and if those ratios are off, or if nutrients antagonize one another, such as the phosphorus to zinc ratios, availability drops, and it takes an awful lot to overpower an imbalance. So what we're saying is look at the look at the problem differently. Instead of relying on purely chemical solubility, use a product that just takes advantage of the natural biological pathways to overcome your chemistry troubles. So again, where our products are bound to a cellulose matrix, which is a food source for your soil microbes, and therefore we access that microbial mineralization pathway to have that soil biology release those nutrients at the right time to allow you to maximize your genetic potential given the environmental conditions that you experience this year. So when chemistry starts to fail, choose a solution that uses biology.
Yeah, Jason, I like the phrase, using nature to help nature, right? So we're using a natural pathway. This isn't new. We're using a natural pathway that's existed for millions of years to help another natural pathway, which is uptake of nutrients to plants. So there's nothing really new in terms of nature here. What's different is that we've patented this, we've turned it into an actual technology that has all those attributes and is usable and it's up for sale today and can provide an ROI. Like it's not crazy expensive to the point where it's unaffordable for people to use it. It's reasonably priced so that you will get a win. You will see an ROI in most cases. But of course, let's be realistic. Not everyone is going to see the same results. It's going to vary. But if people have questions about that in terms of variability, best reach out to Jason. All our soil tests are online in our libraries at soileos.com, and you can see for yourself if you have soil conditions that are similar to some of those trials. It'll show you some information about what you could expect. But any questions on how it works, certainly reach out to Jason. He's the expert on that stuff. So if today sparked some questions, if it's pH variability, soil texture, micronutrients, um, let's see if Soileos can fit into your fertility programs. We'd love that to be the case, obviously.
Yeah, and Pete, I want to be clear, like the goal uh isn't to just buy more stuff,
Yeah.
right? The goal is to deliver stronger, more consistent yields, higher return on investment, better nutrient efficiency, and improved soil health. Uh, I'm out in the industry all the time, and I hear folks talking about how many bushels per acre they made on their farm last year. But it confuses me why we're not talking about dollars per acre.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. That's the most important.
this is a business, and we need to do what's best for our grower customers. So oftentimes when I'm reviewing soil tests for growers or retails, I'll say this is not the field for us, right? Because
Yeah.
our solution is not applicable in that case. So we want to focus on really areas that are outside the sweet spot where we can make that positive impact for the grower. And that really is in those more challenging conditions where you have high pHs, or you have sandy soils, or you have high clay content soils, or you have very high or very low organic matter. Those are the areas that we can help. And when we do that in those areas, we're going to see a positive return on investment, and that is really why we're here to provide a solution that works under these challenging conditions that are not in the sweet spot.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself, Jason. Thanks. If I don't see any more questions coming in right now. So if you have a question, type it in right now, quick, because we're going to wrap this up. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Soileos, Soileos. And we regularly share agronomic insights, trial results, practical field learnings from growers just like you. And I don't see any more questions coming in. So I think that's a wrap. Thanks again for joining us today, and for the work you guys do in the field, in the weather every season. And we all know it's not an easy job, but it's probably one of the world's most important jobs, and we want to help. So
Yeah,
thanks, everybody.
yeah, give me a call if you need. Just give me a call.
He's a nice guy. You should call him. Yeah. And he knows what he's talking about.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.